So I wanted to tell you a little bit, didn't get to last time, about what Family Forward Oregon and the Mother PAC are. Family Forward Oregon is an advocacy organization that's bringing parents into the process of designing and advocating for the kinds of policies that today's families need. Things like paid family leave, earned sick time, flexibility at work, affordable child care, toxic-free environments, and more. We involve parents by facilitating a process where they can reach out to electeds about the things that matter to them, and by creating venues to have their voices heard like this today. And when we talk about families, I want to be clear that we mean all families. No matter how your family is configured, we believe that you should have equal treatment and equal protection. Thank you. We also work with employers to help to provide them with resources that will help them build the kinds of internal policies that we think they need that are both good for families and good for business. We develop resources for parents and employers to help them get engaged in this broader pro-family movement, and we're redefining what it means to be pro-family. And we have a PAC called the Mother PAC that is working to bring mothers and fathers too into the political process by electing candidates who will champion the kinds of policies that we need in the city, in the county, and in the state legislature. So if you like what you're hearing today and you like the work that we're doing, we have put donation envelopes on all of your seats, and we hope that you'll consider giving a donation to Family Forward Oregon today before you leave. And if you do, when you've completed that, feel free to just hold it up and someone will come by and collect it from you. All amounts help. And we also have put on your chairs candidate questionnaire cards. If you didn't get a chance to ask your question in the city council portion of this forum, please feel free to fill out one of those questionnaires and hold it up again, and someone will come by and pick it up from you so we can make sure that your question gets asked. With that, we'd like to begin. We're thrilled to have Gretchen Kafori here today to moderate this forum. She's a rock star. She really has paved the way for the women who are now engaged in doing this kind of advocacy work, and really has made it possible for many of us to be able to engage in this work. She spent 20 years in elected office, working primarily on poverty and housing issues. She's been a state representative, a county commissioner, and she's been on the Portland City Council. In addition to that, she's been a professor of political science and community planning at PSU. She's mentions that she's also the mother to Deborah Kafori, current county commissioner, and she is grandmother to her 3 wonderful children. And I really want to thank her for all the work she's done and for being here today, and I'm sure she's going to do a great job of keeping everyone on task and on time. So I hand it over to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. I don't feel like a rock star at my age, but I'm glad for the introduction.
Hey, you're younger than Mick Jagger.
Maybe not. Maybe not. So I want to thank everybody for coming today. It's really wonderful, and I guess my bias will show, though I've not declared a preference in the mayoral candidates, but I am so deeply grateful for all of them, and the ones in the audience as well, for putting their lives on hold and running for political office, because it's huge, and we owe them a deep debt of gratitude. The candidates will first, same format as the city council candidates. They'll be given 2 minutes to answer what makes the city family friendly. And our friend Nancy in the front row is doing the timekeeping, and as you know from her waving, we're pretty strict about it. Then we have the 3 questions that were drafted by Family Forward Oregon and Mother PAC, and of their 3 major policy goals for the priorities for the city. And I'll call out the order for the candidates to respond. They'll have 2 minutes, not 3, if you were told we had to cut down a bit. And that will finish that part. Then we're very fortunate to have some questions from the Harriet Tubman Leadership Academy for Girls Student Council, which will be fun to hear from them, and you'll get probably 90 seconds to answer that. And I want to remind people that there are cards on your seat. A lot of the questions that people are generating, we're not having time to ask the candidates directly, but there will be postings, as I understand, and compilations of these questions. So if something's burning at you, please write it down, and hopefully it's in some distribution form you'll get an answer. We'll close up with maybe 90-minute closing statements.
That sounds good.
So there we go. We'll start with Jefferson, Eileen, and Charlie telling us a little about yourselves and what you think makes Portland family friendly.
So I want to start by asking that all of us, first of all, thank you for having us, but asking that all of us as decision makers and as citizens and as policy advocates try to think through every decision that the city makes through a lens, through an optic of what will work for families. And that if we do that, it will make all of our decisions better for just about everybody. And I think that is one of the big questions for the city, is whether we can make it better for just about everybody. That means I almost want to take the converse of the question. What makes it work for families is we have a robust tradition of livability. Continuing that tradition will not happen by itself. If we can think about livability not only in terms of sort of youngsters and environmental advocates, but in terms of families, it will impact how we plan our city, that we think about urban renewal zones not only locating parking, but how they're going to address human needs, how they're going to address childcare. And that will impact not only childcare and those who need it, but impact the commute for everybody as we reduce the commuting triangle by trying to put childcare near grocery stores, near schools. I think we can improve livability, make it sort of answer aspirationally your question, if we think about our education system not only as something that we leave to the governor or the school board, but something that even the mayor, even the city should play a role in. I went to Grant High School and Beaumont Middle School, and we just had our 20th high school reunion, and my friends now have children, and they are making hard choices about whether to send their kids to Portland's public schools and saying to me, Jeff, my family's always been committed to public school, but it's not like it was when we were there. A little bit about me. I've been a chief executive of a nonprofit. I have served recently and still serve in elected office. I have engaged for the last 10 years people in the political process, and I'm excited to work with you.
I want to give a big shout out to the kids in the audience. All the kids wave. Good. So glad you guys are here. Fantastic. And thank you so much to Gretchen Kafori for sharing the stage with us. It's an honor to be on the same stage as Gretchen. I think you have to look at how livable Portland really is. Portland has some spectacular parks that make this family friendly. We have a transit system that allows us to be family friendly, and we have a park system that we're growing that really allows us to have strong, livable neighborhoods. I think Portland can be a great place to live, but it can be a tough place to find a job and to make a living and to pay for childcare. And we have to be able to prioritize economic development and job development in our city if we want to stabilize our families. It's really an equity issue. Jobs, I believe jobs save lives, jobs ultimately save families, and jobs allow parents to send their kids to school having had breakfast. And in many ways, a family-friendly city is a little bit like a family-friendly workplace. And I've been involved in putting together family-friendly workplaces for 25 years at Nature's and New Seasons Market, and that includes paid time off, sick pay, locations for nursing mothers, or personal leave time, lifestyle scheduling where you're guaranteed 2 days off a week. You can have a secure schedule that makes sense for you and your family. So I am very excited about bringing my human resources background, my ability to negotiate benefits packages, not only to an employer, but now to a city as a whole. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Thanks for having me.
Let's hold the applause. I know we've got fans on all sides here.
Well, thank you all for being here. I come to this set of questions first as a father who, like a lot of people in this room, have made every sacrifice and made choices in favor of the kids. And I know what those choices mean. I also come today, by the way, as an honorary Girl Scout, which is pretty cool because today's the 100th anniversary of the Girl Scouts. They're having a big celebration in Pioneer Courthouse Square, so it's as close to being a Girl Scout as I'll ever get, but it's great. So you asked us to talk about what we must have in order to be a family-friendly city, and I see 5 things. 1, we must have and keep a great park system. Every time I go in one of those community centers that we put together with the bond measure that I led, whether it's Gabriel Park or East Portland or the Mount Scott Pool, and see all those families with kids in there, I know how great that is, and we should not be closing community centers. We should be making them more multi-purpose for more programs in our community. Secondly, we ought to have complete streets. If our kids can't get to school safely, we're not a livable city. We ought to have a community transit system that is equitable and affordable for everybody in Portland. Fourth, we ought to have a whole set of public policies that get it right, whether it's daycare or affordable housing or accommodation for nursing moms. And then finally, and most important, we must have great public schools. We've held our public schools together with bake sales and auctions and duct tape for 20 years. We send a fortune to Salem and get a trickle back. It's time that we make the commitment to have our schools on a firm foundation for the future. My vision for Portland is one in which everyone's working, every kid graduates, and every neighborhood is a complete and livable community. That's a lofty vision, but we're Portland, and we can do this. And I think you are raising just the right issues for us to make us a livable and family-friendly city. So thanks for gathering this discussion.
Thanks. The first question is about child care, and as you heard before, there are huge waiting lists. A tremendous chunk of family income is going to help fund this service. Parents across the city need accessible and strategically located, affordable, and high-quality child care. What can you do to make sure the city of Portland makes this a priority? And the order, oops, I forgot to tell you, is Brady, Hales, and Smith.
I've been a working mom for many, many years, and I know what it's like to barely be able to pay for childcare. I know what it's like to have childcare basically cost as much as rent costs. And my kids are grown now, and it's gotten so much more expensive. My understanding is that it can be, even for average childcare, $1,000 a month, and that's just for one child. To have childcare now be more expensive than rent or paying for health care is burdening our whole society. I'm so afraid that we have children being left at home and not tended to at all. So we have to take this seriously as a city. I would say that there are 3 things that we can start by doing. Number 1, the city has a great analysis programming capacity. We should map childcare deserts the same way we map food deserts. We need to understand where the childhood centers are and where they aren't. Secondly, we need to have incentives for child care facilities. And actually, Commissioner Fritz mentioned this before. Inside our urban renewal areas, we need to make sure that there actually is zoning for child care centers. In many parts of our city, even outside those centers, there is zoning that's just residential. And if you want to be able to walk to your child care and not have to put your child in a car, drive your child to child care, you have to have a neighborhood child care center, and we need better zoning to make sure that that happens. I also think that we have the opportunity to create some incentives for child care development. We can waive fees, we can waive SDC charges, and get some of these local centers built. So I think this could be one of the more exciting initiatives that we take on as a community, and I'm so excited that you have brought this to our attention.
Next. 3 things: money, buildings, and facilities. First to money. I've already proposed that the city of Portland ought to give a tax incentive, a tax break, to B corporations, socially responsible corporations that make commitments to things beyond the bottom line, like childcare. So we have a few B Corps in Portland. We ought to be the national leader in having B Corps, and having that incentive in our city and county tax code would be a powerful signal that we mean it. Secondly, there are things I think we can do in the zoning code. I agree with Eileen that that's an area to look at. Here's one in particular. We give a 40-to-1 incentive for bicycle parking and lockers in new buildings. That is, we give them 40 more square feet for every 1 foot that they dedicate to bicycle parking and lockers. But we only give a 3-to-1 incentive for childcare facilities. That's an easy fix. Let's give at least as good an incentive for childcare facilities as we do for bikes. As much as we love bikes, we ought to at least do as well for our kids. And then third, I mentioned this earlier, we have a great system of community centers. We have built them together over a long period of time. They got to be in pretty poor condition, and we all worked together and passed a couple of bond measures to put them into great shape and improve them. Let's make sure that they are truly multi-objective places, and let's work with nonprofits to put child care into those facilities that have space for them that don't have programs now. Let's make sure that our schools, as we've done with Sun Schools, are not just providing activities and programs during the school day, but are being used throughout the day. I was out at Earl Boyles Elementary and saw the food pantry that's being operated there by parents and volunteers. That's the kind of smart use of the facilities that we all own, regardless of whose bureaucratic turf they're on.
Motherhood is perhaps the single leading indicator of poverty in the United States of America. Let that fact wash over you for a moment. In a country, in a city, in a state that prides itself on social equity, if you make the choice to be a mother, you are choosing to be in the most likely cohort to be poor. I agree that we should do better mapping. I will tell you, however, I think I could draw a pretty decent map of where the child care deserts are now. But they aren't just where the deserts are of provision of child care. It is the desert of people who can afford them. Right now, it is what? I think $1,000 a month average to send a kid to child care. That's a lot. And I think we should think about money. I think we should think about money beyond tax breaks. That is a handy tool, but it's a tool we've been using for years and years and years and years. And right now at the state level, we're spending more on tax expenditures than we are on public safety, health care, and education combined. So we should be thinking about money. We should be thinking about seeing the whole picture in planning. As I said in my opening, not entirely sure I was anticipating this question, that we should absolutely include child care, either requirements or bonuses, in urban renewal zones and in city plans. It makes it harder in summers when a free or reduced price lunch program goes away with the month of June. One thing I think we can do is set an objective of working with schools and libraries and Sun Schools to have the most robust set of summer enrichment programs. Because right now it's $2,000 for a 2-week summer camp for a relatively typical summer camp. And it makes it a lot harder during that time. Looks like I have more time. Oh, no, I don't.
Thank you.
There's never enough time for you, Jefferson.
I was accused of people not being able to hear the question, and I don't think that's ever happened to me in my life, but I'll do better.
Ha!
Next, we're going to talk about paid sick time. And our order will be Charlie, Jefferson, and Eileen. 40%, as you may have heard earlier, of private sector workers and 80% of low-income workers lack access to any kind of paid sick day from their job. None. They cannot get a single day, paid day, to take care of themselves or their children. Employees are concentrated in this cohort in restaurants, retail, and childcare. So this clearly is an issue that has public health implications way beyond just the family-friendly nature of the policy. Both Seattle and San Francisco have passed ordinances that require employers to let employees accrue sick time so all workers can recover from illness or take care of their sick kids without losing their critical income. Do you support this? And what would you do to make sure that Portland is the next city to enact these family-friendly laws?
Yeah, it's sad that we're behind San Francisco and Seattle on something. That just shouldn't be. Yes, I do support this, and that's one of the reasons why the United Food and Commercial Workers have endorsed my candidacy, because that's a high priority for those working people that work in restaurants and grocery stores across our community. And in fact, if you look at today's community news section, the Oregonian, there's a lot of good stuff in here, important things to read about, but there's also this sad story about how the federal cuts are going to really affect low-income families here in Portland. And this is one of those cases where we as a city ought to lead, rather than wait for higher authority like the federal government or the state government to get there first. So again, I'm sad that Seattle and San Francisco are ahead of us. They won't be ahead of us for long.
I support it. And it's not that hard a question. I supported it before I was a candidate for mayor and offered strategic advice to advocates on the policy, and I will repeat that strategic advice. That I think if we want to not be beaten by another city, is I think how you worded the question, we should get it done before.
No, it was an example.
No, I hear you, but it's how we're going to be next. If we want to be next, we should get it done before this election. And if we're going to get it done before this election, and be very clear, if I'm the mayor and we don't get it done before the election, and if the county doesn't choose to do it, we'll do it. As soon as I can get 3 votes, and I'll bet I can, because I think I have 1 already, and I have an idea where I can get a 3rd. So the advice I gave a while back was to go to the county first, because I think the politics around the county are a little bit better right now, and they cover more people. But if the county doesn't do it, the city should, and if I were the mayor, would work to make it happen. I think part of what we've got to do to make that happen is advocate. Not only advocate at Harriet Tubman, but advocate for businesses, small and large, who might be reticent at the beginning, to make the case, hey, wait a minute. You don't really want to lose people to actually getting sick because they go to work sick and they get other people sick. We actually want people to stay home when they're sick. That's why it's called a sick day. We also don't want to send our kids to school sick because they'll get other children sick. And if we want to have more public health, which makes a much bigger difference on overall community health than any healthcare reform we ever do, we ought to do this, and we should make that case to business people, and we should get business people making that case. And then beyond that, it's the blocking and tackling of building political agreement and building public support and answering the detailed policy questions from what range of employers will it cover, and will there be multiple tiers, and what will be the rate of accrual between hour per hour, and those will be questions we'll need to work together on. And I didn't need any extra time.
It's a yes, and the devil's in the details. And this really should be a statewide and national issue. To think that we still have children going to school sick because their parents have to work, to think that we still have parents going to work sick because there's no other option is really unconscionable. Particularly as a grocer, I can tell you, the last thing you want is for someone to come to work sick, because then you end up passing the sickness around, and nobody wants that. It's not good for the public interest. It's not good for the parent. It's not good for the child. It's not good for the family. So I would like to work closely with Family Forward. I'm, as many of us have said earlier today, that this has really become an issue that Family Forward is raising up almost loudly and clearly for the first time that I've heard it in Portland. So my hat's off to you. And I look forward to building a broad coalition of support for this, which is what I think it's going to take. And I can tell you there already is support in the business community for this initiative. And I bring both a progressive and environmentalist background and a business background to this race. And I'm very excited about bringing that ability to build coalitions across those groups to these types of issues that can be kind of thorny, but we need to pull together and move them forward.
Thanks. This will be your last chance, audience, to turn in your questions and get them considered today. This order will be Jefferson, Eileen, and Charlie, so you're prepared. This was a kind of new one for me, and it was about air toxics. That the toxic emissions from industrial sources, even here in our green city, are very high and almost 10% more in 2010 than 2009. Since there were rules established 50 years ago, nothing major has really shifted in this arena. And the health impacts are not considered nearly as well as they should be. Around the Portland Public Schools, Portland area schools, many of them are ranked among the worst 5% in the nation. And other community-wide, it's actually closer to 30% of the federal poisons going into the air. We know that it's primarily a state responsibility. But what in the heck can the city of Portland do progressively to help reduce, and what will you personally do to reduce industrial air emissions in the city?
Yeah, the dirty secret of Portland is that our air is dirty. And that won't help us in our ability to sell food products or pitch ourselves as places for TV shows like Portlandia. The things we can do, well, let me say one other piece of background. In the early 70s, when Tom McCall was becoming an environmental hero, most pollution was point source pollution. If you wanted to have an impact on the environment, find from whence effluent was coming, find where a smokestack was emitting, cap that, and have a meaningful impact on the environment. Now, the number one driver of our pollution is drivers. So we've got to think, and the city plays a role at how we plan our city. Not only what transportation projects we pick and don't pick, and I'll say something about that, but how we plan our city. Do we push for a bunch of infill housing in East Portland, meanwhile gentrifying North and Northeast Portland, meanwhile underfunding basic amenities in East Portland? So right now, we have moved 12,000 members of minority populations from inner North and Northeast Portland to East Portland, and members of my community that travel and commute in cars to North Portland to go to church. It is, however, also how we think about big projects. I believe the biggest impact we will have on air quality will be to the negative, and that is if the $160 million in planning is translated to $4 to $10 billion in construction and interest for the Columbia River crossing. My guess of what a bunch of Democratic politicians will do is say they want to support the project, gobble a bunch of campaign contributions, and go to environmentalists and talk about BPA and toxics in baby products. But the biggest thing we can do is manage our city so that we emit less. There's more I can say, but I don't want to go over time. And I'm proud to have the endorsement of Bike Walk Vote, who's helping us think about that stuff, and I hope you'll work with us.
And I apologize, Jefferson, because I wasn't clear that these numbers about the toxics around schools do not include vehicle emission. So I kind of didn't steer you.
Oh.
But which just when you're mayor, you can address that. I think it's Eileen.
Okay. I want to give a call out to two women. And I'm so sorry, I'm going to mix Mary's name up again. Mary Pavedo.
She's here.
We have our own Erin Brockovich in Portland. And if anybody has not met her, please shake her hand. She's being humble in the back there. And let's give her a hand. This woman has been able to do something that so many of us hasn't been. She has actually helped negotiate with ESCO an air toxins agreement between the neighbors and ESCO. And the city now needs to step up and help negotiate more of these good neighbor agreements, particularly for communities that have equity-related issues, are lower income, can't stand up for themselves. The city can step up and do some of that, particularly now that we have that model. The second person I want to give a call out to, that I don't think is here, is Sadie Clark. Sadie Clark has a son named August. Some of you may know August. When you spend time with August, you hear him coughing. He is congested. I know Family Forward knows him. And they've literally had to move because of the air quality issues related to their son's health. And Sadie herself is committed and is sitting on the air toxins work group with the county. And I am here to say that I absolutely support the work of that work group. One of the things they're going to be pushing for is a health impact assessment, that the county take a hold and grab that. And I, as mayor, will be supporting that effort fully. And lastly, I'd just like to say that my friend Senator Jackie Dingfelder has been an inspiration to me, and I've been a strong supporter of hers for many years while she's worked on these air toxin related issues.
Yeah, I agree with actually both of my colleagues here. I think the non-point source issue is still real. And in fact, there are all kinds of reasons why we need to keep doing what we have been doing in Portland, and that is give people transportation choices that get them out of their cars. That's a good idea for all kinds of reasons, and air quality is one of them. Public health is another. Livable cities and less congestion, and it goes on and on. So there's still an air quality issue with driving, but this point source issue that Mary and others have taken on with the Good Neighbor Agreement, that's a great new tool. And again, it's an opportunity for us in Portland, and this is true to our culture and our history here, to not wait for state or federal regulators to figure these things out for us, but to craft our own solutions. So I really applaud that approach. As a former neighborhood activist, I applaud anybody who perseveres as long as they did to get that job done. And if the city is a constructive partner, we can do more of them. Good idea.
Jefferson, would you like to have another minute to talk
Yeah,
about?
I can
because
finish
your
the rest
answer
of my
was
notes
very good.
for a different question.
No.
No, it was good for that
my
one
fault.
too. My next note, so it's not cheating, is in fact good neighbor agreements. And let me say, in understanding the distinctions in this race, we agree on a whole lot of stuff, and I respect the other candidates a lot. What I think I can offer is not only what I hope to do and promise to do, but that there are 8 members of the entire Oregon House, I think the entire Oregon legislature, who had 90% OLCV ratings in both of the last terms. I'm one of those 8. There are only 5 who resisted the last transportation package, only 5 Democrats in the House, who resisted the last transportation package because it didn't do nearly enough to answer questions about pollution and around Portland benefits. I'm one of those 5. And in terms of where we're going to get our campaign support, I will not be the mayor because the developers or because downtown businesses pick me first. I will be less accountable to them than I am to you. And in fact, it will take the people of Portland to build the kind of support I will need to win, and I will remain very, very accountable to you. Agree on good neighbor agreements. We've got to build the politics so we can make that real.
Thank you. The next part will be a question from Harriet Tubman's wonderful Leadership Academy for Girls. And our guest question person is Alexandria Darling. But I've got a whole bunch more, so maybe you would like to introduce yourselves. And we're so delighted to be at your school and to have you with us today.
I'm Mackenzie Abbey, and I am the student body treasurer.
My name is Liza Henderson, and I am the student body secretary.
My name is Zaira, and I'm their 7th period rep.
And I'm Alexandria Darling, and the student government president. So first of all, I'd like to remind you all that there's a sale for raffle tickets for a gift basket with candy and for chocolates sold at the student store, and the winners will be announced at the end. Now, we know the mayor doesn't have direct control over the city's schools, yet the educational outcome of our students and the quality of our public schools have a direct impact on livability, city services, crime rates, property values, and a host of other very relevant city concerns that affect all residents. What will you do to work with the 6 Portland school boards to ensure that our kids are receiving an equitable, top-notch education from safe, stably funded schools?
I'll jump in. Okay. First of all, can I thank you very much for coming, and I appreciated that call out for the raffle tickets, so let's amplify that one. You know, when I walked in the school here, I noticed the drips coming from the ceiling into the garbage cans with the plastic liners. It's pouring rain. It's actually raining in this facility. We have to be able to pass a school bond measure so that we can upgrade the facilities of our schools. And we need to make it a fiscally responsible option that will ultimately support 21st century classrooms. As mayor, if we don't get to this November 1st, as mayor, I will lead the charges on building a bond that will pass in this city so that we can have 21st century classrooms. Secondly, we have to hold the bar high. We have to say that graduation rates, which are now at 59% on-time graduation rates, even though they're up 5%, they're only 59%. And if you're a Hispanic person, they're 46%. And if you are a Native American student, they're only 41%. We have to continue, and the mayor can use the bully pulpit to continue to strive for better graduation rates. But beyond that, we have to strive for 21st century graduates. Students, the mayor can again set the bar high and say we need students who are scientists, problem solvers, bilingual global citizens, tradespeople, people who are really ready for the 21st century economy. I will do that as mayor. For instance, we are about to open a bio-life sciences center together with our university system at the waterfront. We don't have a high school system and a high school program that feeds directly into that type of world-class facility that we are going to have here in this city. And I will make sure that we connect the resources that need to be connected so that we can have students that are truly ready for this century.
You may remember I mentioned this issue earlier today, and in fact, this is one of the reasons I'm running for this office. I didn't wait to be asked about this issue. I mentioned it on the very first day that I announced that I wanted to serve as mayor. And I've mentioned it, some of you know this because you were there, in every coffee, in every forum. This is a core issue for me. And in fact, I worked on the school bond measure that passed some years ago, and I worked on the last school bond measure as well and raised money for it and hit the streets for it. So this isn't in the future for me, this is in my core. We must pass a school bond. We must put the operating basis of our schools on a firm foundation, and for all the school districts in the city. If you go to the East Portland Community Center, again, you'll see that these aren't just words for me. I and the folks that worked on the Parks Bond measure passed the measure, came up with the money to build that, and then I negotiated an agreement with the David Douglas School District to build that new community center on the corner of a middle school. What a perfect synergy to have a city recreation center and a senior center on the campus of a middle school. So that's what a mayor can do, to get back to your question. Be a partner, be a fundraiser, be an advocate at the legislature, be a problem solver at every turn, because this is for you and for all of our kids what we have to do, and as mayor, I'll be a passionate advocate for an effective one as well.
I think there are two things that a mayor can do to be helpful in the education debate and policy, generally. Be a good partner with education advocates and leaders, and two, pick one or slightly more than one meaningful priorities that will really make a difference. Here's how I think about partnership and what I've done. I agree that much of it is about dough. I was at Grant High School when Measure 5 passed. In 20 years, we haven't done a meaningful thing on education funding since. That is maybe the biggest leadership failure by elected leaders and citizens in our state. It is enormously problematic. What can we do about it? Well, we can advocate statewide, and I have. One distinction, I think I'm the only candidate in this race who publicly supported measures 66 and 67 to publicly support, to support public services, while raising taxes on families earning over $250,000 and increasing the $10 corporate minimum tax for the first time in nearly 100 years. So you don't just have to, again, hope. You can watch, and not only watch how I played in the Portland Public School Bond, but that I canvassed in the Park Row School Bond and endorsed the David Douglas School Bond. I also pitched to the governor and helped pass the Cool Schools Initiative that gets a start at retrofitting public buildings for air quality and better performance and cost savings. There's stuff in the city we can do about that. And then second and last, we can pick a major priority. My good friend Sonny Pettit has been passing out a piece of paper to some of you, hopefully by the end all of you, about a proposal I need your help on. and that is to make Portland a national example in summer programs, summer employment, and summer initiatives, to bridge the gap that drives the achievement gap, to help access federal dollars that we could get for food, to help make ourselves more educationally competitive overseas and in our country. That's something that a mayor cannot do alone, but with community partners and with your help, we can. It's, I think, one of the best ideas, and I want to say that we could do, and I want to thank the Portland teachers for endorsing me in this race.
I want to thank these wonderful young women from Tubman School, and best of luck to you in your educations. You're hearing a lot of commitments today, but keep track of people. Make sure we do what we're told. Bye. Thank you. We're coming to the last part of the forum. Do you want me to do this now? I think it's a good idea. On your seat, I might add, there were donation envelopes in addition to the question cards. So if you would like to make a contribution to Family Forward Oregon for these critical and essential issues and the work going ahead to help hold one of these three fine people accountable in the future, we'd appreciate it. So now we have some questions from the audience.
We had lots of questions, so just want to remind you guys that even if we don't ask your question, we will be getting them to the candidates and trying to get answers in some form or another. So the first question is, our kids' school schedules and parents' work demands are clearly out of sync in today's economy. While our school-age children have almost 18 weeks, 4.5 months off a year, very few working parents have anywhere near that much vacation time. I really wish I did, but I don't. This creates added stress on already tight family budgets and also contributes to other problems when so many kids are unsupervised for such long stretches of time. What can the city do to help fill this gap, which also has significant and well-known educational downsides for children, especially in low-income families?
Well, I'll start. Good. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And just to remind you, you had 90 seconds.
Okay.
Can you repeat the last part of the question?
What can the city do to help fill this gap, which also has significant and well-known educational downsides for children, especially in low-income families?
I think it's largely a linkage between one of the very first questions and the most recent question. What can we do about childcare and what we can do about education funding and the education system? A law professor of mine who had been the head of the American Psychiatric Association said in 1998 that the biggest challenge facing my generation was what we were going to do about raising children as we were equalizing the workforce. And that we hadn't really answered that question. We had helped break down some barriers in employment, but hadn't really broken down a lot of meaningful barriers. So I think I go back to what we can do about childcare. Some of that's money, some of that's city planning. I think we advocate with our school system so that we don't have no school November, where when I was a kid, you'd get like December was largely a wash. Now November is largely a wash. It might not be a terrible thing. We should work with people like the people in this room to think about adjusting the school year. I have a question. If we were going to increase, let's say, to 200 school days, do we want them all in a row with 2 months off, or do we want them a little bit more spread out with 6 weeks off? If you do that, that means you need more childcare. And I think that's one of the big questions that we as parents, that we as citizens, that all of our parents, and that we as education planners need to be embracing also. And I'll try not to repeat everything I said around childcare and education funding.
I have to take a second. Jefferson, since you've mentioned this so many times, I actually publicly, even though I wasn't in public office, supported measures 66 and 67. In fact, I was asked to do the commercials for them.
And you didn't.
And I was out of town. I was asked to do them. You can respond to that, Jefferson.
We're not having a debate.
I voted yes on them,
Okay.
and I happily paid my taxes in Oregon for them. So I would like to just say that I was a young parent. My first child was born when I was 21, and my second when I was 23. And
We don't have time.
ultimately
anymore.
understand what it means to try and figure out how to deal with this gap in care for childcare. I have literally begged neighbors, begged friends, begged colleagues to take my kids. It is so heartbreaking to have to manage this, and the stress is so high. So I personally understand this, and this has to be something that we as a community can overcome. Certainly the city can support the SUN systems. Certainly the city can support the youth summer program, youth summer employment program. And certainly the city can help define the gap to bridge the youth pass on the TriMet issue that we're trying to address right now. So I am committed to this. There are no great answers. There are some ways to bridge those gaps, and I will be looking forward to working with many of you to solve this critical issue.
Well, this is one of those issues where I think we do need to think bigger and take on some of these fundamental questions. You know, we have, since Measure 5, every year Portland sends off a feast of revenue to the state, and we get back a thin gruel of support for Portland Public Schools and other schools within our urban environment. That's a non-functional system that we've suffered with for a long time, and we've made it up, as I said, with bake sales and auctions by parents and ad hoc measures by this or that local government. So this system is not going to work much longer, and we need to take up the question of, are we going to be served by the state system, or are we going to be freed from it to do what we want at the community level? One of those fundamental issues that goes with that is we have an agricultural calendar that we still base our school year on. Any farmers out here? I mean, other than urban ones? You know, there are not very many farmers that need the kids to show up to run the plow anymore. And yet our education calendar is still based on that. So it's one of the time to take this question up, as long as we're also taking up the question of, can we pay for it ourselves if the legislature won't do it?
So another question from the audience. What do you think the city's role should be in addressing disparities in health, income, education, and access to services that all families experience in Portland? What does equity mean to you with regard to Portland families?
90 seconds. Charlie?
Okay, that's going to be a hard one, I think, for each of us to do in 90 seconds. Well, first, the Coalition of the Communities of Color report and its successor reports has really given us, as a community, a base of information about these issues that is so important, and that we need to honor all the work that went into those by activists and organizations and professionals, so that now, as policymakers, we really know what the issues are and what the inequities in our city are. To me, equity isn't just equity of opportunity, it's equity of result. So when we look at things like where we spend our money on transportation, we have 60 miles of unpaved streets in our city that are mostly in low-income neighborhoods. And if you looked at that story in the Oregonian last week, we're not even keeping up with the maintenance of the streets we have. So we really need to reorder our priorities, not just around taking care of the streets, but taking care of the folks that need them the most. When it comes to school programs, again, we need to make sure that our partners in the school districts are paying attention to these same sets of equity issues. Affordable housing, something that you, Gretchen, have worked on so passionately, has to be available not just in urban renewal districts. We have to find ways to provide affordable housing throughout the city. And finally, when we get to urban renewal again, when we start talking about new urban renewal areas, we want to make sure we're lifting up the neighborhood, not changing it.
Thank you. Eileen?
We've had an incredible process in this town around the Portland Plan. I don't know how many of you have been involved in it, but it has literally involved thousands of community members. And I am very proud to live in a place that is developing a plan that puts equity at the center of the plan, whether it's affordable housing, access to livable neighborhoods for everyone, jobs for everyone. This plan is going to be voted on at sometime in late April. I believe it's April 18th. Let's get our voices heard on it. There is some work, serious work that has been done on this, and we need to push this through. It's an aspirational document. It's a document that talks about the heart of Portland. It has hundreds and hundreds of action items. It needs a plan for implementation. I'm someone who has always said, I don't like white papers on a shelf. Anybody who has sat with me on the Oregon Health Fund Board or in any of our committees at the statewide level where we were able to develop a plan that now provides 94,000 more kids with health care knows that I do not sit idly by and develop a plan. I am an action-oriented, entrepreneur-oriented individual, and I am excited to find a way to actually implement this aspirational document that focuses on equity.
Jefferson?
I'd say 3 dimensions. I think there's an economic dimension, a geographic dimension, and a racial and gender and age dimension. In terms of economic, if I were talking to that same law professor now or in 2008, he might have said the biggest challenge facing our generation are the biggest and most gaping wealth disparities in our country since before World War II. I encourage everybody to watch a TED Talk by Richard Wilkinson that talks about the impact of wealth inequalities on countries. That in fact, if you're an underdeveloped nation, the best thing you can do to improve health is to become a developed nation. If you're a developed nation, getting richer doesn't help you. The thing that helps you is becoming more equal. And we should be thinking about tax policy and economic policy accordingly. Second, geographic equality. 27% of the population lives east of 82nd Avenue, where I live. According to the Portland Tribune, only 1.5% of the stimulus dollars were spent there. Only 3.3% of the transportation dollars. We have no fancy grocery stores east of 43rd Avenue. Racial equity. I am a candidate who did not publicly criticize the Communities of Color Coalition proposal for an Office of Equity because I understand that progressive white Portland has to start embracing the fact that we are progressive multicultural Portland. We are changing and we aren't getting whiter. And in my own life, my own career, I started an organization that started pretty darn white. And thanks largely to other leaders in the organization, we got much more multicultural and developed a program that now has nearly half of its summer fellows who are people of color. We have to reflect that kind of change citywide.
All right, so we have one last audience question. You'll just have 1 minute to answer it. It's not very complicated. And this is a follow-up to something you all said. I think you all said this in your introductory remarks about the importance of parks. If the parks in Portland are so important for children, why do we spray pesticides all over them? Have 1 minute.
I think I'll answer that question factually and then respond to, I think, what's underpinning it. My guess is because that's the cheapest way to keep them looking nice based on the habits and traditions that we have. Pesticides are mass-produced, they're cheap to buy, they give us lawns that we were taught in the 50s and 60s they were supposed to look like. I think to change some of our habits, we have to change our expectation of what lawns and parks are supposed to look like. We have to move to a different kind of green space, a different kind of ability to manage weeds and manage invasive species. Sometimes that's labor intensive, which also, by the way, can help provide neighborhood scale jobs programs by helping pull some of that stuff up. There's probably more that could be said about that, but that's 2 things.
I think our values should be reflected in what we do in managing our parks. So that is something that we ought to change. And I agree that we ought to use more, not just different practices, but use more community-based approaches to these. One of the programs I've been involved in is Friends of Trees. I've been a volunteer for 20 years. I mean, look at what we've accomplished in this city with that level of volunteerism. The same thing happened with the No Ivy League in Washington Park that pulled ivy and started to get rid of that pest there. So I agree with Jefferson. I think if we can enlist people as volunteers, either through nonprofits or through neighborhoods, that do that more labor-intensive effort, then we give the opportunity without losing the quality of the parks to get away from a practice that really, you're right, doesn't match our values.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I actually think so many of our parks have an environmentally friendly parks pesticide program. Is anybody in the audience? There's 3 of them. There's 3 of them. We're piloting it, and we're looking at how to extend that. I know I was involved early with the Salmon Safe Coalition, who were proposing certain parks-related protocols, basically. And I think that we have an opportunity to roll this out at a larger scale, because the Portland ethic really is about safety, having organic gardens, not gardens full of pesticides, taking care of our health. I've been working on health and health-related issues for so many years, and I look forward to championing this initiative as we go forward.
Well, thank you so far. We're going to wrap up today and have is it 90 minutes?
90 minutes.
seconds.
You said 90 minutes earlier.
I'm
I want my 90 minutes.
Not just the children will be asleep if that's the case.
Send me
Yeah.
home. 90
I'll go
minutes.
first.
90
minutes
seconds.
each.
And we're going to run down the row with Jefferson, Eileen, and Charlie, and closing comments.
I want to say thanks, and I want to say that I think that we are, as a city, I don't know if I want to say at a crossroads or at choosing whether the arc of the Portland story is on a sort of downward trajectory or will launch for another 20, 30, 40 years of innovative, people-based, progressive policies. I really think that as we watched a school bond go down, as we watched TriMet not given authority to get new buses, as we watched a failure to pass publicly financed elections, we were seeing what ought to be a call to service by Portlanders who care about this city to ensure that our elections aren't merely a series of transactions, but an enterprise and engagement for a better city. The other thing I want to do is thank the other candidates for mayor. That the kinds of institutions that Eileen has been a critical leader of in this city are the exact kinds of institutions that help make this the city that it is. The streetcar and other leadership in the 90s that Charlie led on helped really pave the way for what this city is now. I think we have some serious and meaningful differences, a lot of other things we agree on, but I deeply respect the other candidates for mayor, and I really appreciate your time today.
I've been involved with sustainability for 25 years, whether it's sustainable agriculture or helping to build out sustainable food systems or sustainable grocery stores like Nature's or New Seasons Market, or POSI, the Portland Sustainability Institute. We're in the midst of launching the Eco Districts project in this town. Or at Eco Trust, as the vice president of food and farms there. I understand sustainability in my gut, but here's what I believe about Portland, is that our core competencies are not building green buildings. They're not building sustainable food systems. They're not farmers markets. What our core competency is, as a community, is the ability to think holistically. And if you think holistically, you know something is broken here. We have to be able to do more than just take care of the environment. We have to take care of each other, and we have to make sure that our city functions from an economic perspective, that we have a tax base that can support our schools, that can support the arts, that can support our social service programs. And I have the background, the entrepreneurial approach to lead this city so that we can really have a truly sustainable city of Portland.
I think, did you do yours?
Not yet.
One more.
Not yet.
Charlie.
You know, that was a problem on the council, too, you know.
I wasn't in charge there. You can blame me today.
Well, thank you all for being here. First, I want to deal with the little shot my friend here took, and that is I moved to Stevenson, Washington for the best of reasons, and that was to take care of my wife's children with her because we got married and lived in the house that she owned. And I moved to Stevenson, Eileen, not to cut my taxes, but to discharge my responsibilities as a father and live with my wife. Now, I've also shown my values in what I've done here in this city. You know, we all say good things when we run for office. Look at what we've done. Look at the park system in this city and the condition it was in when it was handed to me by Mayor Katz and the condition that I left it in after serving as your parks commissioner. Watch those kids and families in the Mount Scott pool or in the Selwood pool in the summer or in Dishman or Peninsula Park. You know, I'm very, very proud. Every time I go in one of those parks or in one of those facilities, I know that we as a community did the right thing. And what matters here is the capacity to bring people together and get those kinds of things done, as we did, Gretchen, on affordable housing. When the city couldn't figure out how to make mixed-use housing happen, Gretchen and I worked together and did. The big difference between us, the ability to make this weird form of government we have in Portland actually do those great things for families and kids. Thank you.
I think we have a terrific field, of mayoral candidates. We're very, very lucky, and as I said, we appreciate your doing it. I also want to give deep appreciation to the women and perhaps some males who helped organize today, because these events do not come together easily. It takes a lot of work and a lot of planning, and we have some terrific women. I hope you're, thank you. Thank you.